curious to hear your take. I did a piece that's it's titled "Can Calling Hip Hop Anti-Black Be Anti-Black?" And this was a conversation that was had by Malcolm-Jamal Warner and Monica Pearson on her show, Monica Pearson One-on-One. I don't know if I want to go into it now. It's kind of a longer topic, and we're ending the end of the night. But very briefly, Malcolm-Jamal Warner was on a show, and he had some interesting things to say about hip hop's, I guess, position in the world. I'll play it real quick, and let's see what we think about it, and then we could talk about it or not. Let me know what y'all think about this. Let's go.
Well, what I love the fact you were at City Winery, and I've never heard of this, which shows you how much I've been out of it. Poetry versus hip hop.
Yeah.
Now, wait a minute. To me, they're the same. What's the difference? They're both poetry.
Yes, but hip hop is a little more rigid in terms of subject matter, in terms of the actual execution, because, hip hop is there's a rhythm, and you have to get your words in, there are certain cadences because you got to fit in these bars of music. Whereas poetry, there's more freedom and more of an open field in terms of content and subject matter. Whereas, unfortunately, the success of hip hop is predicated upon being anti-Black.
Explain. Expound.
When you listen to the hip hop that gets the exposure, right? Conscious hip hop isn't getting exposure. The messages in hip hop that get the exposure are misogyny, murder, mayhem, and disrespect of fellow Black people. Right? That's not all of the hip hop that exists.
Right, but that's what mainly.
That's what gets. Yeah, like you can't have a popular hip hop song without using the N-word
or calling women horrible names.
Yeah. It's like our Black music has somehow become anti-Black, and it's been so normalized that it gets right by us.
And it just did with me.
Yeah, the conditioning, the programming it's so powerful. Like in all of my poetry, I constantly talk about my love-hate relationship with hip hop. Right, but when those of us who are hip hop purists and we talk about how the younger generation, the hip hop is trash, well, we're complicit in that because the younger generation grew up watching us and listening to us listen to what we listen to. The content isn't different. The skill set may not be as great, right? The execution may not be as great as was artistically, but the content really is the same. And most of that content, to be Black music, again, is really, a lot of it is anti-Black.
Ooh, excellent. So this poetry versus hip hop.
Okay. I really don't want to get into this now. I'm going to encourage you. I see some of your comments, and I appreciate that. And then he goes on to talk about his poetry. This whole thing. Jesus, I don't want to get into this. I wrote a whole long thing about it. Okay. He's all over the place. And then I just want to finish so you understand what it is that I have a problem with. He talks about this poetry versus hip hop thing. Now, he just said in the beginning that hip hop is different than poetry, because poetry, hip hop doesn't have the depth of content that poetry does, which is silly. That's ridiculous. What a dumb thing to say. What a biased thing to say right out of the gate. But okay, whatever. And then he talks about the content and the negative imagery and stuff in most of what's being pushed in hip hop. And I guess that's true to some extent. Fine. What he's saying, while maybe like a valid interpretation of what's being pushed out, is still a terribly harmful thing to be saying. Okay? And I know on the surface you might be like, and there's been, I went on Facebook about it, and people were like, he's trying to point out the problem. What he's saying is not wrong. I get that. But I look at things differently, and I hope that y'all can rock with me, okay? I definitely think there's some credence to what he's saying. But by starting off with poetry is not like hip hop because poetry's better, just shows me that, wait a minute, hold on. Why are you using this platform to only, here's what I wrote about, to only disparage hip hop? I could go into any community in the world, any group of people, any establishment, anything, and I could find the negative, and I could talk about it ad nauseum. But if all I talk about is the negative, knowing that there's so much positive, and neglecting to talk about that, then my intention isn't as pure as you might think, as I might try to explain it. If I go out now, all you hear me talk about is the terrible, migrant crisis at the border, and they're coming in and they're killing people and they're doing all these things. But you never hear me talk about the brilliance and the beauty in the immigrant community, and how we're a nation of immigrants, and how immigrants have brought culture and food and music and art and all these things, and woven it into the tapestry of American life. And this is what makes our diversity brilliant. Like, if all you hear about from me is, hey, some immigrant came and killed somebody, like, and I know that stuff exists, then am I really being true to what I'm trying to tell you? And that's what I feel is happening here. I wrote about it. I want you to read it. I'll go into the last part.
Allows the audience to decide.
He has a thing called poetry versus hip hop. So again, this delineation, this pseudo battle, as if hip hop isn't poetry, as if poetry can't be hip hop. It's strange to me. But okay, he has this an event series, and okay.
Which is the better?
Yeah, and so it's an extension of poetry slams, right? Because poetry slams, it's poets going up against one another.
Sure.
The poetry versus hip hop opens it up, and at that point, just like in poetry slams, it becomes about the poet.
Exactly. Go ahead.
And their poem and the execution of it.
Right.
When you've got the poetry versus hip hop, again, it's about this MC and his subject, his content, and his execution. And this poet and their poem and their execution.
Sure.
And it's
a battle royale.
Man, it really is.
Oh, she saved him. It's what? I don't understand. You just said that hip hop can't match poetry in terms of its subject matter. It's all terrible and horrible. Oh. Not the hip hop at your show. I see. So if you want hip hop that isn't misogynistic, murder, mayhem, I got you. Come to my show. Everything else is horrible. Not here, though. Here, we go toe to toe with the poets, and it's a battle royale, even though she saved him with that. Okay, so I'm lost with Malcolm-Jamal Warner's whole critique of hip hop. If all you're going to do is take this wonderful, and it's all he said on it. That's it. That was the end of that segment of the interview. Man, listen, I'm just a guy that loves hip hop culture. Obviously, look at all I do all this, and I'm here every Monday night. I'm whatever. I don't know why. Because of y'all. But y'all, if y'all not here, I'm not here. And every chance I get when I say something about hip hop, I'm going to say something positive. I'm going to say something beautiful and uplifting and whatever. And if we're talking about violence that's reflected in hip hop, like we talked about tonight, Mayor Adams talking about drill music, I'm like, well, yes. But if you take care of the communities and the circumstances that help create the content, like we'll have better content. We won't have people that feel like violence is sort of like their answer to survive. Like and if they're making music about it, it's because they're expressing what they have to go through. And if you change that circumstance, you might have different people with different content. Like you'll always hear me say, yes, but, yes, and in the vein of improv. And so I'm like, yo, this guy sits on a platform. And then I went back. I need you to, I'm going to put the link up. Y'all got to definitely read what I wrote. Y'all have to. Again, I find it really, really confusing why somebody, and then I had the same, beef with Questlove when he came at the Kendrick Lamar Drake battle in a tweet and said hip hop is truly dead because he didn't like the possible violence that could have emerged from the battle, as if hip hop battles and violence go hand in hand. It's not true. And you're giving that impression. Why? So saying these things, although they may be valid, like they may be okay, we don't want any trouble, true, hip hop is truly dead. That part in that tweet to people who don't know any better, because Questlove is listened to and valued outside of the culture, just get the impression that this is what hip hop is about. Hip hop is bad, battles, violence, death. Hip hop is dead. There's nothing left. There's nothing left. It's gone. But at the same time, Questlove was pushing a book called Hip Hop is History, as if hip hop is history. Oh, what a time to be alive and make controversial statements to help, I'm just saying hypothetically, or maybe coincidentally, to help boost the sales of your book. I don't know. This is what's on my hip hop mind. I don't know. And so when Malcolm-Jamal Warner comes out and repeats what he's been saying for a long time, because I went back, he said it in a Breakfast Club, he said it in a bunch of different things, different places. And I see something happening here. And I'm going to say this for the first and maybe only time in a long time. So what he says makes sense. Like, oh, yes, it's the same over-litigated hip hop is bad that we've been hearing for 30 years. From C. Dolores Tucker to your mama to us now as old heads looking at young people. We've heard this for 30 years. The content in hip hop is horrific, demeaning to women, anti-black, promotes black on black violence. Geraldo Rivera said that hip hop has done more damage to the black community than racism, which is bananas. But you see what happens when you keep repeating that hip hop is bad, 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 violent, 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 terrible, 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 anti-black, anti-black, anti-black. Then people start to believe it and believe that that's all there is, because who's telling them different? Besides me, besides us. Few people. Most people are just reporting on the music, and they report it and they post the thing and new song dropped and, blah, 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 or someone said something. But when TMZ posts about hip hop, it's Malcolm-Jamal Warner. I could show you the link. Malcolm-Jamal Warner says hip hop is anti-black. And so people who don't understand all of this start thinking, hey, yeah, hip hop is anti-black. But I've spent over 80 episodes of this podcast and live stream showing you how hip hop is pro-black and pro-humanity and pro-peace and pro-love and pro-unity and pro-having fun. Peace, love, unity, having fun, right? But no, they don't talk about that. So why Malcolm-Jamal? Because I think it's his name. It's Malcolm-Jamal. So I guess it's his full first name, right? Why Mr. Warner? Why do I hear you repeating these tropes that have been assessed onto hip-hop for 30 years? But at the same time, you don't say, except, and then give an example. He does throw in a real casual, not all hip hop is like this. And then he goes on to talk about how really no hip hop is like this. No hip hop is not like this, right? He says, not every hip hop is like this, but most of what's being pushed. Fair. We all talk about this. We all say, well, the mainstream, what the record labels put, the radio stations. I said I wasn't going to go into this, but here I'm going into this. Y'all rocking with me, I'm rocking with you. Then we'll land this plane after this. So he says, it's being pushed. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we know that. We understand that. Just like we understand that documentaries don't get the budgets that Marvel movies get, right? Every art form is going to push the least common denominator, and that's usually going to be something that's violent or graphic or sexual or got curses all up in it, because it's what people like to consume their content. Like, they want to see John Wick. They don't want to see, like, unearthing the dinosaur bones. Like, that's just the way it goes. But there are documentaries. So if you were to tell me, hey, what's your opinion on the film industry in America? Like, oh, these blockbuster superhero movies. But yeah, they're rollicking good fun. And they're what people go see. But you know what? Thank God there's still the Discovery Channel. Like, I always be like, yeah, but we also have this. And it's strange to me, but not because I understand why now. It's strange to me why you hear Malcolm-Jamal Warner say the easy thing that's easy for people to agree with. Oh, most of this rap music talks about, violence against black folk or demeaning towards women. Sure. How does that statement help the situation? It would appear to me that you're saying that because you disapprove of that. You don't want all the music to reflect these things. So in his conversation, he doesn't blame anybody. He doesn't say, one Charlemagne asked him one time on Breakfast Club, so is it the artist's fault or the label or the industry fault? He says both. Okay, so now we're blaming artists who are young and impressionable and come up in a wildly, sometimes violent, sometimes unprivileged background, and they see music and they emulate it and they try to, sometimes they even try to be stars. They're just trying to express themselves. And we used to just talk junk, and now talking junk is music because you can make music on your laptop. So people talk junk in music, and that's just the way of the world now. So you're blaming them? Okay, so the industry you're blaming them? Okay, fine. So again, it would appear that you don't approve of this. So I would ask anyone who speaks loudly and has a voice of celebrity status, so then what are you doing to counter that? If you don't like what's being pushed, then push something. You're a celebrity. You have power. You're on this program that we can't get on. I can't get on that show. But your sound clip was then replayed in hundreds and hundreds of outlets. Why don't you just say the name of somebody who's doing it good? D1. It's a rap artist, been around for a while, does good work, who's been on this kick lately where he's a Christian rapper, where he will point out the immorality of rap artists in general, right? The rap industry, professional rap artists or whatever, and talk about them being sort of, slaves to money or to the industry or just saying bad things or doing bad things that are against God, not godlike. And that's fine. It's a fine angle to take. I have nothing wrong with that. But I wonder why these folks who get these platforms never seem to mention anybody else, as if they don't exist. Now, we know that there are people who do godly music. There's people that do non-anti-black music. We know there's people that do pro-black hip-hop. Maybe it's music, maybe it's not. Maybe it's initiatives like the ones we talk about on this show. We know these things exist. Malcolm-Jamal Warner surely should be able to find out people who do this kind of work and big them up and lift them up, so that people who listen to him don't just get the impression like, yeah, he right, man. Hip hop sucks nowadays. I remember back in my day, and they go off into their cave with their CD player and they never come out and learn about the fascinating, beautiful stuff that's happening with young people and hip hop as a culture, not just a genre. So you're turning people off to this whole thing. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you take the time to say, well, it's so concerning to me that it's anti-black. I'm going to start a whole podcast called Not All Hood, where we're going to discuss. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. What's that? Oh, he started a podcast called Not All Hood, where they discuss stereotypical ways that black folk in America have been shut out of certain industries. And okay, that's valid. That's important work for sure. What's that? Oh, he also has that poetry versus hip hop series. Okay. Oh, wait, poetry. Oh, he does poetry. He has albums. And he said, oh, in my poetry and in my work and in our shows, we try to talk about the positive stuff. We show positive poetry and hip hop coming together. Oh, wait, it's starting to look, just me, that you're presenting yourself as an alternative to the stuff you're talking about. All that stuff is crap. But I'm not. D1, same thing. All that stuff is garbage. But I'm not. So buy my stuff. Come to my shows. Come to my podcast. I would think that if you're that concerned about the state of the music or the state of the culture, that you would have interest in pushing folks other than yourself, but you don't ever seem to. So while these things may make some sense and they may tie into our visceral hatred of, sometimes the music is negative, sometimes there's too much, use of the N-word, as Malcolm-Jamal Warner points out, as the woman points out, like talking about women in a derogatory way. Of course, this is the way it's always been in hip hop. But that's not what all hip hop is about. And when you keep on perpetuating that same narrative, you're just adding to the general population's understanding of hip hop, which is that this is bad juju, bad stuff. And what's worse is when you do it and purposefully leave out all the other people that are doing great work. Purposefully, intentionally leaving out. Maybe not, but you really should know better, because otherwise don't talk. That's what I said about Questlove. Like, don't tell me hip hop is really dead. You should know. If you don't know about all the wonderful things that are happening in hip hop, then first of all, what the hell? And second of all, you do know. So why are you purposefully holding back that information? It's because you want to present yourself as the alternative. We're the roots. We do real hip hop. Okay. I'm D1. I do moral hip hop. I'm Malcolm-Jamal Warner. We do poetry versus hip hop and poetry and good hip hop. Okay. That's why I say, on the surface, these statements may sound reasonable. We want better representation of our music. We want our young women to not hear, all this, I don't want to say negative. Like, they act like we didn't come up on Put It in Your Mouth and Big Mama Thing and, and Mobb Deep's Gunshots didn't make us levitate. And Lil' Kim used to be scared of the dick, but now she puts lips to it. Like, we came up on all this. And then Malcolm-Jamal Warner says the young kids do it because that's what we did. So he says the content isn't different. The style is different. So then you're blaming you? I don't understand. I just don't get it. It's so harmful to just be a big name, high profile celebrity, and all you could do is point out the negative. We know the negative. This isn't a new problem. We're not trying to discover what the problem is. We know what the problem is, and the problem isn't really even a problem because we should be free to express ourselves in any way we want. Was Dolomite a problem? Was Donald Goines a problem? Was blaxploitation films a problem? I mean, maybe, but gave a lot of people work and put out some interesting art, whatever. Was Richard Pryor a problem? If you talk about the unsolicited use of the N-word, Malcolm-Jamal Warner, in hip hop, was Richard Pryor a problem? Was Eddie Murphy a problem? Right? Would you gonna, shake your fist and tell everyone to pull up their pants like Bill Cosby did? Is that where you're getting this from? I just don't get it. Like, if you're going to be a critic, then be a fair critic. Spread the gospel of the good with the bad. If not, you're harming the culture. You're harming the culture that you say you're trying to protect against. Ugh. And so I wonder if there's an ulterior motive. And I realize that the ulterior motive is you want to be the alternative. You don't want to promote the alternative. You don't want to big up the alternative. You don't want to say, hey, listen to Manny Faces. He has a great show and he talks about all the alternatives. Thank God for Manny, because, otherwise it's all filth, foreign filth. No, you just say it's all terrible, but come to my show. Listen to my poetry. I got you. Okay. Well, I got you.
Manny Faces.
You sick for this one. Sick for this one. Sick.